My name is Jim Harris. I would like to welcome you to the conference entitled Vulnerable Mission, English and Dollars Powering Ministry, Good Idea, held at All Nations Christian College in UK, 12th to 15th September 2021. We would like to introduce Vulnerable Mission in this opening session. We are defining Vulnerable Mission in a particular way. We are saying that Vulnerable Mission is that engaged by an outsider who wants to reach people using their languages and resources. We are suggesting that the traditional missionary approach to an African community is a little like this. The missionary has a language and resources and invites people to share in those with him or her. What we are suggesting is more like this, where a Western missionary approaches people through leaving those things behind. We're not saying that a missionary should not know English and should not be educated or should not receive outside support, but that they should leave their nice house and four-wheel drive and medical aid and English language and offers of free education behind when engaging people in key ministry. A few people will now tell us how they have come to value Vulnerable Mission.
My name is Nick Henward. I'm one of the UK board members for the Alliance for Vulnerable Mission. Over the last 15 years or so, I've paid occasional short-term visits to Kenya, representing a community development network. The best times have been when I've joined in with the travel and the transport and the accommodation of Kenyan church friends. The worst times have been because of my own tight timetable that arrangements have had to revolve around me. I guess I'm viewed as a middle-aged, wealthy, white man, and that's who I am. But it always seems to get in the way. My heart is to encourage and serve those who I meet. But I have high expectations of making a difference in a 2-week trip. I expect my links in Kenya to speak English, even bashing through English to Swahili, to Pokot, back to Swahili, and then back to English, this double translation. Because of my eagerness, I'm drawn in to provide all the finance for the trip, it seems. To be honest, the good parts of my trips have been when I've stumbled into local events, the ordination of a new bishop or an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and have been an appreciative observer. During our 9 years in Nepal from 1995 to 2005, my wife and I worked hard at our Nepali language study and achieved some proficiency. I'm sure we were frequently misunderstood by our Nepali neighbours, but we tried at least to live, to fit in, to live in a normal house and to use day-to-day objects and items that we bought locally. But in my work, I was generally seen as an employer, a representative of the funder, one who should be shown what's going well, not what's not going well. And I was aware that I too would tend to pass on the same positives back up the reporting chain to my European-based bosses. In 2 Philippians, the Apostle Paul urges a different way. Chapter 2, verse 5. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, and being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Let the same mind be in us that was in Christ Jesus. I presently work as a GP in Leicester in the UK. Medics find it especially challenging to shed the "I can fix you" mentality. I'm working on it. And as I promote cross-cultural Christian work, it seems clear to me that following the incarnational example of Jesus, living life with people on their terms, in their space, at their pace, speaking their language, accepting their hospitality rather than buying our own way in, is a good way to proceed.
Hello, my name is Jim Harris. I'm the chairman of the Alliance for Vulnerable Mission, wanting to share just briefly why and how I go about doing vulnerable mission. I've been a missionary in East Africa from 1988 to date. Originally I was actually in Zambia, been based in Kenya with occasional visits to Tanzania since 1993. What struck me about my experience of mission is the observation that very often the Western missionaries tend to be very dominant. I also noticed that frequently indigenous people seem to be particularly interested in the money and the resources that a missionary had, perhaps even more than in the message that they might be sharing. I also realized that African people had a very different way of thinking than the one I was coming to Africa with from the UK. All these realizations had me wonder what would be the best way of ministering to people so as to be able to communicate to them in a way they understand clearly, and particularly to be able to hear clearly what they're trying to say and what they are actually understanding, so as to be able to articulate the message of the gospel of Jesus, biblical teaching, in a profound and helpful way. The solution I've come to that question or dilemma is the need for the practice of vulnerable mission. Vulnerable mission helps a missionary in at least two ways. Firstly, because a missionary learns the language of the people and uses the language of the people, they acquire ears to hear what people are saying. They can hear what people are saying in informal context as well as in formal contexts. They can also begin to grasp the categories in which people are thinking, so that even when they use English, you can understand more clearly what they're meaning. Secondly, people might ask, well, why use indigenous resources? Why not take resources with you? The problem with bringing outside resources is that it orients people to wanting as much of those resources as they can, wanting to get as many of those resources as they can. As a result, people tend to do things and say things that are pleasing to the missionary, even when those things might not be the most important things in their hearts and their lives. Hence, I found that using vulnerable mission as a basis enables me to reach African people with the gospel in a way that would otherwise be extremely difficult.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill Black, and I live in Nairobi, Kenya. This has been my home since 2008. Before then, I was a missionary in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia from 2000. I'm a theological educator, and I've taught at a number of graduate schools of theology and universities, both in Ethiopia and in Kenya. Presently, I'm senior lecturer in theology, systematic theology and church history at St. Paul's University, which is one of the larger of the private Christian universities in Kenya. And I'm also a senior lecturer at the Orthodox Theological Seminary in Nairobi as well. Before then, I was teaching at the Nairobi Evangelical Graduate School of Theology, also here in Nairobi. And then when I was in Ethiopia, I was the lecturer at the Ethiopian Graduate School of Theology, and I also served as the senior pastor of the International Evangelical Church in Addis Ababa, which is the largest of the Protestant churches in Ethiopia. So I've been active in Christian missions and active in theological education for over 20 years now. And perhaps it'll be helpful to know something of my history even before I came here. I actually grew up a Presbyterian Christian and was drawn into evangelicalism, both from my youth group that I was involved with, and then also at the university where I went to, and I was involved with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship there. And it was largely from that experience that I became interested in Christian ministry and also in missions. I had the chance to come to Kenya for a short-term mission way back in 1980, and that proved pivotal in my life. And I'm here largely because of that experience back then. So I also had the chance to go to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, where I got my Master's of Divinity. I was a ordained Presbyterian minister for 22 years. I got my PhD in history from the University of Cambridge, and I did my work on Richard Baxter's Reformed Pastor. Some of you may be familiar with him and his work. So, interestingly enough, by the time I moved to Kenya, I had already been attracted to Eastern Orthodoxy. And so in 2011, I became a member of the Kenyan Orthodox Church, which I have served since that time. So I'm holding together within me a number of different interesting and challenging ideas and perspectives. And I'm just grateful for the Lord that He has given me these years to know Him and to love Him and to grow in my understanding of who He is and my appreciation for His Word and my love of the history of His works and ways amongst His people. So I'm looking forward to meeting you and to interacting with you during our time in the conference. Thanks again for the privilege of being here and of sharing this time with you. Bye.